Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'm going to take a closer look at an article I read several years back. It was called The Spiritual Law of Cause and Effect, and it was really quite interesting article on many levels for me to see how this person tried to make some sense out of what's really a pretty confusing issue for most people. And I'm using this video to follow up the video I did just yesterday and uploaded today, published today, where I explained how important it is to understand the 3 stages of knowledge when you're going to talk about anything. If you don't understand the 3 stages of knowledge, it's going to be real easy for all of us to get tricked and fooled because we don't know where that person is coming from. But I've identified all the important pieces of the puzzle that I think are important and had them so that they logically connect to one another. And when you see how they connect, you can then see, well, wait a second, I'm over here talking about this, and now you come over here and you're talking about that. You know, that we can tell we're not on the same page here. So the way this article went about it, they said there are many levels to cause and effect, or there are many levels of cause, rather. Now, we all understand cause and effect, right? Well, what I've learned from my own self-education when I created my special teaching tool is that cause and effect is not 1 and 2. And that's the problem most of us have. We think cause is 1, the effect is 2. And yet there's something that comes before the cause. And this is what's tricking everybody, where they don't understand it. And as I mentioned, this article this person wrote did the best job they had not understanding 3 stages of knowledge of trying to explain the many levels of causes. There are the gross levels of cause, the actions, but then there are these subtle levels, more powerful. And of course, what are they talking about? They're going back to the first stage. And if y'all ever looked at any of my videos where I explain how my special tool works and the 3 stages of knowledge, and that for us to solve our problems, we got to go back or get out of the negative A box of false knowledge and go up to the plus A box of knowledge. So our battle begins in the first stage. I'm not unaware of that piece of the puzzle. But in order to do that, we got to work backwards. Remember, we have first stage, second stage, third stage. Knowledge is acquired, applied, manifested. Thoughts, actions, reactions. Beliefs, causes, effects. Belief system, lifestyle choices, feedback system. The things we think in the first stage, the things we do or have done to us in the second stage, that's the important stage. The things we get in the third stage. So this is the point. When we look at what we got in the third stage of knowledge on the wrong path, these are the dark ages. We have hundreds of thousands of problems, and the sad thing is most of them are 100% within our control. So what we have to do if we have a problem, we got to work backwards. The first thing you do is you go straight to the second stage of knowledge and see, what are we doing? We got to identify, what are we doing? As Buddha said, you must clearly see what is wrong. Well, we know we got a problem. Does that mean that's where we start? No, you got to work backwards. Why do we have the problem? What are we doing? Or something being done to us? We got to identify that. Can't change what you don't acknowledge, as Dr. Phil would say. But Buddha thought of it first. You must have the right views. You must clearly see what is wrong. We don't have that information. And that's the key, is we don't have the information. It turns out most of us are making this mistake out of ignorance. That's where we start our journey, with false knowledge. So yes, the first stage is the most important part. That's the first portal we got to go through, is between that doorway that's in between the negative A box of false knowledge and the plus A box of knowledge. We've got to find the knowledge we're missing. And then knowledge is no good unless we apply it. And this is the flaw with a lot of you guys that are trying to criticize my recent videos, is that you keep going back to the first stage. And that's not what we have to change. That's not what we have to correct. We have to look at what we're doing in the second stage. So I agree. We have to recognize we have false knowledge. I agree we got to go up there and find the knowledge we need. But we can't find that knowledge unless we know the mistakes we're making. And in our case, the mistakes have to do with our food. And they all have to do with 5 things that we mastered and applied to our food. They were bad applications. So that's how we got in the mess we're in. Somehow we decided to make a bad application. And we're making a mistake now for whatever reason we don't know. We know why we're making a mistake nowadays. It's part of our traditions. We start our journey off in life on the wrong path with false knowledge. That's why we make mistakes. And that's what the negative B box of problems are. These are mistakes. These are where the cause is at, the action is at. We're doing something. We have to identify that. Anybody who takes the focus off of that and say, no, the fall of mankind is back up here in the first stage somewhere. It was our intentions. You're being deceived and tricked. We have to understand everything we can about that first stage of knowledge. I agree. But we work backwards. We first find the mistakes we're making. So when you look at the first cause, the second stage of knowledge has the first cause. You can go to the first stage of knowledge and you look at the 21 problems of knowledge. There's 2 forms of ignorance, 12 source of false knowledge. Piece number 3 is the number 1 source of false knowledge. So it's piece number 1 in that little puzzle. There's a lot of number 1s. What number 1 are you talking about? The first cause, you got to think, what does cause mean? Oh, the cause starts with our first stage. I agree. But it's not what we're doing. When you use this, it's all perhaps a matter of semantics. If you're going to use the word cause, you have to understand what it applies to the second stage. And then you have to understand why we do what we do. That's where we look at our belief system. That's when we look at all those other factors, our thoughts, our emotions, our intentions, all those other things. And yes, they're important. And yes, we can't exclude them. But when it comes to something as profound as the first cause, the first mistake, the original sin, we got to stop burying our head out of the sand and get tricked into looking at what's before the second stage. Remember, we got these 2 boxes before the second stage. We got the doorway in between. We got 2 doorways coming over. We actually have 2 gateways that go across. In fact, the gateway coming down from the plus A box down to the negative B box is piece 109. That represents 109. So my whole story, I can assign piece numbers to everything, explaining we took something we mastered, piece 36, we applied it to one of our needs, piece 24, we slid down 109, now we got piece 95. That's the fall of mankind, that's cooked food. Now, why did we make a bad application? Why did we start cooking our food? I don't know. Bad intentions. Oh, it's the angels, the spirits. Doesn't matter. It's all before. We still have to identify it. I don't care what the source is. I don't care if there's all these good angels and bad angels influencing what we do. Doesn't matter, man. Focus on what we're doing, man. You're getting tricked every time you get blinded into that mumbo jumbo. The purpose is to keep you from being focused and identify the fall of mankind. We got to correct it. Now, does everyone have to be 100%? If anyone's ever watched any of my videos, you know I don't advocate that. Because I don't know what the minimal biophoton level needs to be. I've already expressed we have 2 groups of needs. People call me extremist. You don't even watch my videos, shame on you. I tell you, man, there are some really pathetic people on the internet. That's all I can say. They attack you, create straw man after straw man after straw man. All of it's bullshit. And it just makes them look like one big shield. But man, people are also trapped in their little ego too, so it's hard to tell for sure if they're just another useful idiot or another internet shill. We know they can't exist without each other. Those shills need the idiots to support them. That's how you can usually identify those 2 groups. Anytime you got 2 guys teaming up on you, going after someone that's trying to help do something good, you got to question what are their motives. Yes, the truth has obstacles, doesn't it? It's not easy to make some sense out of this. Gross causes, casual causes, or subtle causes. Again, that's a perfect example, as I pointed out at the very beginning of this video, how if you don't understand the 3 stages of knowledge, you're going to think what precedes the cause is part of the cause, and then when you talk about the cause, you're going to include what precedes the cause. And you know you're not focusing on what you're doing. The subtle causes, intentions, our thoughts, good angels, bad angels. It's before what we're doing. Don't make this complicated, guys. Don't get so easily distracted. Once again, anybody who takes the focus on what is it that we're doing and then says, oh, cooking couldn't be what caused the fall of mankind, that's nonsense. It's the only logical, it's the only logical possible answer. Nothing else fits the answer and then provides a solution. Nothing else does. Every other thing, oh, it's your intentions. You just got to have good intentions. Oh, those angels up there, if those good guys would finally win, would have more positive influence on us. Got to take responsibility, man. Got to stop getting distracted. I tell you, man, the more I hear from one person, shill. So many things fit a shill. And I bet you guys, if you're listening to this, probably don't even know who I'm talking about. Once you understand the Con Artist Handbook, once you understand the Hasbara Handbook, once you study psychopaths, you start to see that these guys are magicians. It's all a con. It's all one magic act. I'll never forget when I finally came to that epiphany. And I looked back, it was just like how Yusuf Mullins had an epiphany when he realized all conspiracies were satanic. It was the same type of epiphany for me. Once I realized that the people who rule the world are pulling off this illusion, is because that's what it is. It's an illusion. It's one big magic act. It's one big con. What was that one quote? So dark, the con of man. That's the quote in that one documentary that made me realize who the people are that control everything. It's one big magic act. When you study magic, they point out in that one documentary, now this is an interesting, the symbolism of 9/11. They talked about the tree of life going from 1 to 10, and 10 is God. And what magicians do is they go to 9 and they skip 10 and go to 11, and the 11 is the magicians, and that's supposed to be the symbolism of 9/11. And of course there's more symbolism in the two towers representing other towers and everything else. We live in a sick world, my friends. And it's all a big con. It's all a big magic act. We're always being distracted. Not once have I found anybody give me a viable answer for what are we doing in the second stage. Keep getting people trying to distract everyone else by saying, oh, you're just not enlightened, John. You're not aware of these subtle levels of cause. So they're either gross, that's the action, or they're subtle before the cause. John, you just don't understand. You just don't have enough pieces of the puzzle. It can't be the first cause. Don't you know about those other causes? Those more subtle causes? They're more powerful. You're getting tricked into looking at the gross cause. Don't look there. They're just, again, they're like magicians. That's what doctors do. Cause and effect. What's the name of your problem? Negative C box. It's an effect. Give it a name. Don't look at the cause. Hide that cause away. Oh, don't look at the cause now. It's the intentions. It's the same thing. Don't look at the cause. Don't look at the cause. Either focus on the effect or let's focus on what's upstream. Now, we do want to go upstream, but that's the knowledge we need. And it's not about our intentions on whether we're going to apply it. Of course, that's important because you don't understand, some of you guys, that just because you have a thought doesn't mean you apply it. It doesn't become manifest. That's the key. Not everything we think we apply. That's why what we think is not an automatic. Now what we do, this is what's important, what we do in that second stage of knowledge is an automatic and goes right to the effect. That's the law, cause and effect. You see? The thing about everything in the first stage of knowledge, it's worthless unless we apply it. And sometimes we don't want to apply things. That's why we lock people up that have impure thoughts down here. That's what that piece 105 is for. Go on, guy. I explain this in my videos. The people who rule the world are magicians. They put blockers. They don't allow people to act out on the impure thoughts, so they don't have the actions. See, they know how important the actions are. If you don't have the actions, you don't have the effects. Medical system, they're magicians too. They're in the next doorway, 106, on the negative pathway here. False knowledge, mistakes, problems. You got prisons in insane asylums here in 105 that don't allow people to act out on their impure thoughts, so they don't have those negative actions. But for all the rest of us who have negative actions because of our real ignorance, they put drugs in the middle, so then the cause doesn't become an automatic. Don't let the body communicate to itself, and the warning light won't go on. What we have now is basically a corrupt mechanic that clips the sending unit to the warning lights on the dashboard of your car, or just takes out the sending unit, or the bulb out of the gauge, or whatever, the light, whatever the indicator is. It's a magic act. We've got to realize that. Anything that takes away our focus from correcting that mistake, the fall of mankind, is a distraction. I've said it 1,000 times. What happens when we correct the fall of mankind? We get reconnected. If we're not getting reconnected, everything's a distraction. Oh, John, getting disconnected is not the fall of mankind. That's not what caused the dark side of our behavior. Plus the serpent. Remember, there's two main factors that contribute to this. And that's the problem with cooking. Changes the bowel transfer time of our food. Now we got a serpent inside our bellies, and then we don't replenish the sunlight energy in the nucleus of our cells, and we can't communicate. We're chaotic, out of control, which sets us up for all the other problems that are the result of having that problem. See, this is what so many people don't understand. I've identified 10 subsequent needs because we are sick and disconnected because of the fall of mankind, and 6 of which are problems of knowledge that are used to control us. And people are trying to figure out, how do we fix the money system? How do we fix the educational system? How do we fix the media, the government, religion, spirituality? What about these people with their need for power? It's a simple solution for all those. That's what people don't understand about the power of the first cause. That's what the first cause does. That's why it's the fall of mankind. And we fail. We did something we're not acknowledging. Everybody said something happened. Obvious something happened. We don't like what we got down here in the negative C box anymore. And when they tell us what it was, not one answer I've ever heard from anybody gives us a solution to correct the fall, because it's not just something that happened long ago, it's happening today. That's the other thing I mentioned in my video. There's 2 things you have to understand about something profound about the fall of mankind. Number 1, there's 3 stages of knowledge. What's important is what we do in the second stage. We'll figure out what's before, then afterwards, but in the meantime, we got to correct that mistake. The other thing is that we have to know that there are 2 main events. One is in the past, one is in the present. We keep making the same mistake. And if we would stop making that one mistake, it would change our whole collective consciousness on a level that no one can even understand and comprehend. Even though I've bumped up my biphoton levels higher, I still can't experience what it's supposed to be like on this planet. That's why I'm so motivated. I want to know what it's like when all the rest of you bozos get on this bus, bump up those biphotons, poop out that serpent. I guarantee you, that's the secret to a good life. What's the meaning of a good life? Well, Tolstoy said it begins with self-control. And that begins with fasting. He knew the problem we had as a species. It was gluttony. Tolstoy figured it out. Oh, I'm smarter than Tolstoy. John Rose, he doesn't know anything. My schematic looks a lot better than his. Those guys aren't on to something. All those other people saying this, nah, they didn't have any experience. You know, they only worked with thousands, not millions. How would they know? Yeah, it's an exciting journey, my friends. The hero's journey is so exciting. You just got to stay motivated and understand how important my tool is. If you haven't studied my teaching tool, you're really missing out, because everything can be related to these 3 stages of knowledge. I remember a man I met when I first put this up. He watched every one of them, even did his own video on this. And it was his understanding of it, and he was a smart man. And saw the value of it. In fact, within several days was able to correct the mistake he was making in his business because he didn't realize what box he needed to be in. If you're not getting the results you're looking for, you got to start with something better. So the first cause is we start off on the wrong path, or we start off with bad knowledge. Yeah, that's not the first cause though. That's how it began. It's the first thing in the first stage of knowledge. You see, the first stage of knowledge has something first, and the second stage has something first, just like I said before. Even when we look at the 21 problems of knowledge that have 2 forms of two-value logic and 12 sources of false knowledge and 7 wilderness factors, there's one of those 12 sources of false knowledge I think is the number 1 piece, so it's number 1. Is that the first cause? A lot of people point the finger at that, piece number 3. That's the darkest of the dark side of our behavior. And remember, it's a reflection of us. We got a bell of bad behavior. And I love it when people try to use the excuse that there are saints that are eating horrible food. Look at them, your theory doesn't hold up. Well, come on, man. There's most of us are in the middle of the bell. A lot of people are close to the bell too, so y'all can relate to those. And a lot of y'all are close to that side too, the bad side, the psychopath. So we got saints and psychopath. Most of us are in the middle of the bell. The vast majority of us can't relate to the edges at all. And we can't cut the edges of the bell off. That's what's important. That's why we all play a role. The bell itself has to change. If a ship is heading for an iceberg, we're the trim tabs, we're the rudder on the rudder trying to steer the ship, but the purpose of steering the ship is so that we can feed the people in the ship better, so that eventually the ship is better, and it becomes sink-proof. It's the unsinkable ship of humans. Simply by eating the right food. Stop altering it. Remember, we don't live in an ideal world anymore. Some of us might have to do something a little bit extra because we're damaged. And I've talked about that umpteen times in my other videos. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video was to help follow up my video yesterday, explaining the importance of the 3 stages of knowledge. And that if you don't understand these 3 stages, you're going to be easily tricked. And then we're going to be confused. We're not going to be able to communicate to one another. We're going to misunderstand one another when we talk about the first cause has to be in the second stage, and yet we have people who, because of the first stage of knowledge, those subtle causes, because of things like that, they realize, no, you're not first. What are we doing? It's what we do that we have to acknowledge. First step, Buddha. You must clearly see what is wrong. If you don't acknowledge that cooking is the fall of mankind, you are in denial. Because guess what? It fits. It fits in every way this story can be told, especially when you look at who the rulers are. They're Satanists. They worship fire. They're using fire to control us. It only seems fitting that's how they would do it. Remember Nimrod? You remember what he used to like to do? Remember how he killed all the males born when Abraham supposedly was born, and they hit Abraham, and then finally he found him. When he found him, he said, I want you to worship fire. Now why would Nimrod, the first demonic ruler on this planet, want Abraham to worship fire? Because that's what they worship. And we're blinded by cooking our food because it puts us under a spell. You've heard Plato say that before. Whatever deceives men seems to produce a magical enchantment. As soon as we start cooking our food, we develop hunger sensations that sometimes haunt us for eons. Because they're emotions. Thought linked to a sensation. We store those. That's why you gotta fast. Take a solid food vacation on water or juices to cleanse not just the other trash in our body, but all that emotional trash we've accumulated over our short period of life here, struggling on this planet that's like being in a cave of ignorance. We grew up not knowing what to do. We do things we think are okay and they're not. We're told whatever we got is outside our control. Nothing you can do about it, just keep doing what you're doing. And we've been indoctrinated on this subject for so long that we have so many references that support these beliefs. Every time you turn around, you're being bombarded with more references. You don't even realize that you just had a bunch of more references stuck into a belief that you're going to defend at almost all costs, because those are so many references. If every one of our beliefs were like a book with 2 covers on it, and every reference was like a page inside of it, some of our beliefs have books that are this thick, and there's so many pages in it. The normal analogy, of course, is to use the tabletop and the legs as the references. So a belief is a tabletop, are 2 book covers. The references are the legs that support that belief, are the pages that fill those books. The thing is, you can really visualize a big book, can't you? After a point, you got so many darn legs under that table, it's all one big solid tree trunk, and it's shooting up into the sky. Yeah, it's pathetic. Society attacks early when we're helpless. Very, very hard to break away from this herd mentality that we're brought up into. Most of us are indoctrinated from birth into a belief system and a way of life that guarantees everything is going to continue. We're not going to learn the truth about history, so we're going to believe in scarcity. We're not going to learn the truth about health, so we're going to trust our doctors and they're going to poison us, and we'll never wake up to that reality because they're our experts. And the exciting thing about all of this right now is we can pretty easily go one way or the other right now at this stage of technology. We are on the verge of exploding, helping people understand to make better choices. This isn't about extremism. This isn't anything fanatical, except if you think about it this way. When you look at the fall of mankind, you either have the answer or you don't. So you're either extremely right or you're extremely wrong. I'm convinced I'm right. Everything points to it. And I haven't found one thing that we are doing in the second stage, not the first stage, in the second stage. What are we doing that's affecting us the most? Oh, it can't be food. Oh, you bozos. Have y'all never read any of the studies that they've done on nutrition and the children growing up and how they behave and how healthy or sick they are? To deny the diet and health connection, behavior connection, any of those connections, is absurd when it's so obvious. And the struggle that most of us have, is saying bye to those things that we think love us. But they don't love us. In effect, they're going to be the cause of our death if we don't realize what they're doing to us. So yes, it's not an easy thing to do to say goodbye to those guys. What's the best way to say goodbye to them? Take a solid food vacation. That's the best way to make any sense out of this. Once you have a brand new reference, you're going to be able to challenge a lot of those old references that are up in that first stage of knowledge that's keeping you on the wrong path. I've identified 21 main problems of knowledge, 55 total problems of knowledge, and if you just focus on one of them, testing an idea's time has come. Take the first of my 3-step process. Go on a solid food vacation on juices. Go the distance. One day at a time. I guarantee you, my friends, you can do that. Then, and only then, we understand that we got to be focused on the second stage of knowledge. It's what we're doing. We got to stop doing it. And when you stop doing it, you're in for a treat.